everybody, welcome back to Needle Workshop. My name is Emily and today I'll be presenting a tutorial for our newest pattern, the open thigh full stretch dress. This is an extremely revealing design that can be accomplished easily in just a few steps. Now I know that stretch fabric can be very daunting, but stick around to learn some tips and tricks to help you sew this monster of a fabric. As per usual, all our patterns come with super detailed written tutorials that includes tons of extra information such as a measurement guide, a printing guide since the pattern is print at home, some material suggestions, and tons of pictures and graphics to help you through the tutorial. This pattern is also available in XS to 4XL. For this particular pattern, you will absolutely need a very stretchy 4-way fabric. The best way to know if your fabric is stretchy enough is to test it out by assembling just the collar portion, like this. If you can fit it through your head, then you know it's good and stretchy enough. The problem here is mine is actually a little bit too big for my neck. It was readjusted, but even with the readjustment, I can still fit my head through it. And that's what you want. Also important is you'll be building most of this dress using a combination of overlock and zigzag stitch. If you are unfamiliar with these types of stitches, please go watch our video on the subject. I'll link it right here in the corner and in the description box. It'll be very handy to prepare you for the project ahead. And as always, we recommend making a mock-up before starting. No two bodies are the same, so making a mock-up allows you to tweak and adjust the pattern to make sure it fits just right for you. Mind you, this one is very forgiving given that it is extremely stretchy. Also important to note is that the seam allowance for this pattern is 7 millimeters wide unless specified otherwise. And now, without any further ado, let's start on the tutorial. First things first, let's start by taking out our front and back dress pieces. We'll want to sew them together right side to right side at the side seam with an overlock. Once we have this done, we'll want to finish the hem of our dress. And this is where the video is going to start taking some wild tangents to better understand our options when sewing extremely stretchy fabrics. I was at my local fabric store buying fabric for this project when I came across this thread, an EcoFlex thread made for stretch fabric. I had heard of stretchy thread, but had never actually used one before, so I got very curious if this was really worth picking up in the first place. I decided to test it out, and to do that, we'll be using the EcoFlex to do a straight stitch on one fabric and a zigzag stitch on another. We'll be testing the same stitch with the same settings with a regular all-purpose thread and seeing if there is really a difference between the two. Here are all the test subjects. The blue is the EcoFlex and the white thread is regular thread. Right away, I can see that the EcoFlex did not help prevent any of the puckering effect we tend to get when using a zigzag stitch on a stretch fabric. So that's something I'll have to try and fix regardless of the thread I end up using. Stay tuned for more on that later. Starting with the straight stitch, I'm gonna give both of them a light tug to see if there's a difference. Right away, I can feel that the straight stitch with the EcoFlex is actually giving a bit more bounce and flexibility than the other one. If we give the regular stitch a strong pull, you can hear and see it rip apart in several places. It has no flexibility at all. Now let's take a look at how our EcoFlex fares on a stronger pull. It's actually much better. I'm actually honestly impressed here. It's not perfect, but this might actually be an option if you could manage to get your tension to work with you. This is also why we recommend not using straight stitches on stretch fabric in general. Especially for beginners, it's very hard to get the tension for a straight stitch to match the stretch of the fabric. Now, if we take a look at our zigzag stitch, this is where the EcoFlex really shines. As you can see, the regular thread tore really easily, but the EcoFlex is really retaining all that stretchability. Okay, this is in no way sponsored, by the way. I just picked this up for fun at the store, but I'm actually really happy with how it worked, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone looking to work with stretch fabric. Now, you might be wondering, how do I stop my fabric from puckering when using a zigzag stitch? My recommendation is using water-soluble stabilizer. It's the same thing you use when doing embroidery work. We're gonna test out our straight and zigzag stitch again, but this time they'll both be backed with stabilizer. The top one was sewn with a straight stitch and the bottom one with a zigzag stitch, and let me tell you, I was pretty impressed. There is still one more product that I'd like to go over with you that will help finish the hem of your stretchy creations, and that's hem tape. Yes, you can use stabilizer to help sew the hem, but hem tape can be a much more valid option depending on what you're trying to do. So what is hem tape? Hem tape is usually a little adhesive strip that can be applied using heat or some form of wash away quilting tape. Personally, I wouldn't recommend a permanent bond tape for the hem of a stretchy fabric, even the ones said to be for stretch fabric. I find the glue can often seep through the fabric or really mess up the hem after a few washes. It can also eliminate a lot of stretch, which is sometimes a really bad thing. For our current project, it could be forgiving, but if you're sewing horizontally on a stretch shirt, for instance, that could kill your ability to put on the shirt altogether. This can really depend on the product you use and the quality of it, so it can sometimes be a gamble. Instead, I recommend a wash away quilting tape. As the name implies, it's a temporary bond and it washes away in the wash. It'll help both hold your hem in place when you sew and stabilize your stitch. You just apply it along the edge, remove the top section of the tape, and fold the hem in before sewing. After a wash, it's completely gone and retains all of the stretch that you want. With all this new information, how do we want to finish the hem of the dress we are working on? Given that I want to retain a lot of stretch at the hips, I'm going to be using a stabilizer in that section. The stabilizer will allow me to lightly pull on the fabric as I sew, which is a classic technique to help retain as much stretch as possible. For the rest of the hem, I'll be using the wash away quilting tape since it's easier to use and that section doesn't need to retain that much stretch. I eyeballed those sections, but we'll give more precise instructions in the booklet that comes with the pattern. To finish the hem, we'll start by working the hip section first. We're going to fold the edge inward by 7 millimeters and ironing it into place. Once that section is ironed, take out your quilting tape and apply it to the edge of the fabric where we want to use it. Afterwards, fold the edge in again by 7 millimeters. Do not iron on top of the section with quilting tape. It can make the glue seep through the fabric and stain it. Also, fold in the hip section one more time by 7 millimeters and use some pins to hold it in place. The fold facing down, start sewing the hem. I'm going to be using a zigzag stitch here since it's the safest option and the one I'd recommend to a beginner, but this could easily be substituted with a straight stitch if you have the right thread and the right tension. Once you arrive at the hip section, place the stabilizer underneath and lightly pull on the fabric as you are sewing. Like I said earlier, this allows the stitch to retain more stretch, and the hip area is the one that will be under the most tension when worn. Make sure to remove any pins as you go and proceed all the way to the end of the hem. Finish both sides of the dress before doing the hem proper. We'll be using the exact same technique to finish the hem. For the armhole, we'll want to overlock the full section before turning it in by 7 millimeters and top stitching it into place. The inside won't be visible here, so we can use the overlock stitch instead of rolling in the hem twice. I used the stabilizer here to help me sew, but you can also use the quilting tape. Last but not least, let's install our collar. Right side to right side, sew the collar shut at the shortest sides. Wrong side to wrong side, fold your collar. Align your collar to the right side of the dress along the neckline. There are notches on the collar that will help you align everything properly. The seam of the collar aligns with the center back of the dress. If you've forgotten which section is the back, know that the neckline goes up higher on the back piece. Overlock everything in place. Make sure to remove your pins as you go. Last but not least, move the seam allowance of the collar up towards the inside of the collar. You can help keep it in place with pins. Using a zigzag stitch, stitch the seam allowance of the collar in place to the collar. This piece needs to stretch around your head, so make sure it's as stretchy a stitch as it can be. Once you've washed the whole thing to get rid of any stabilizer residue and quilting tape, your piece is ready to be worn. I love the design since it's incredibly sexy and low maintenance care. It's also incredibly forgiving in terms of fit since it's made from really stretchy fabric. I really can't wait to see what y'all gonna make with this pattern, so make sure to tag us if you want us to see and share your work. So I think that covers everything for today's video. So as always, make sure to like and subscribe if you like these kind of videos. It always helps with the growth of the channel. You can also follow us on all our socials and tag us in your projects if you'd like for us to see and share your work. So I hope this was helpful, and as always, good luck with your projects, guys. Bye bye.